What is up, Scream Team? Zach Cherry here, and in this video I will be ranking all 5 movies from the Scream franchise, which just happens to be my absolute favorite horror movie franchise, in case you couldn't tell. So with that in mind, make sure you're subscribed to the channel with those bell notifications turned on, toss this video a thumbs up, and most importantly, let me know in the comments down below how you would rank all 5 Scream movies. Let's get into it. In 5th place is going to be Scream 4. 15 years after the Woodsboro murders, Sidney Prescott has become a best-selling author who returns home to promote her self-help book based on her survivor story. It isn't long after she arrives that a new string of murders pop up, which seem to be targeting her teenaged cousin Jill, as well as Jill's high school friend group. Okay, before we really get into details here, I just want to put a spoiler warning out there, because obviously I am going to be discussing things from each film that if you haven't seen them before, it might ruin it if you haven't, so why are you even watching this video? Go watch Screams 1, 2, 3, 4, and Scream. When I think about Scream 4, I don't consider it to be the worst Scream movie so much as the 5th best Scream movie. When I first saw it in the theater, I really did love this movie. I thought that it was a return to form at the time, but on every subsequent viewing since, it's kind of gotten, I don't want to say worse for me, but I just really start to notice the flaws and where it kind of sets itself apart from the 3 movies that came before it. I think that as a standalone chapter, Scream 4 works really well. It's a fun movie, but I think the fact that it is kind of a standalone movie really hinders its placement within the franchise, because you could take Scream 4 out of the equation and go from 1, 2, 3 to the new one, and you really wouldn't miss all that much, because there's no lessons learned here, no character development. The legacy cast is merely just here to go through the motions. So by the end of the movie, we're left with the OGs still alive and Judy, and this underwhelming sense that all of the events that just transpired were nothing more than a temporary inconvenience within the grand scheme of their lives. Like, other than a few minor injuries, Sidney, Gale, and Dewey are still the exact same people from the start of the movie to the finish. Like, regardless of the fact that they all survived, there was literally no emotional stakes for them in this one, which would be all well and good if there were any for the younger faction of the cast instead, but they're also completely wasted by the fact that they're basically just there to be cannon fodder. And that's not to say that I don't appreciate certain performances, as Hayden Panettiere is definitely the strongest part of this movie, in my opinion. I don't think that Kirby is the most well-defined character just on the written page, but what Hayden Panettiere brings to the role certainly elevates her to a level that puts her among like some of the greatest characters of this franchise. And then of course there's Emma Roberts, who just her turn as Jill is one of the most entertaining things, but still most of these characters are very underwritten. Even in terms of Jill, we don't get a whole lot of her throughout the movie until we find out that she is the killer. And I'm sure you could like make an argument that the movie is subverting your expectations, and that's something that, you know, the Scream franchise is well known for. But I just think that when you're really building a story around characters, to not have like one character with a really good through line really hinders the movie. And I don't want to say that creatively this is a dud, because it's not by any means, as Wes Craven was a consummate professional. You know, he always made sure to give 100% to every project, but I think that of all the movies, this one has the most studio meddling, and we see that in the fact that Kevin Williamson wrote a script for this movie that they started to tinker with and change a whole bunch of things, to the point where he had to walk off of the set because of issues that he had with Miramax screwing around with things. And then for them to bring on Aaron Kruger, who wrote Scream 3, as well as a whole bunch of other screenwriters, to just kind of pick up the pieces, and completely ruins the trajectory of what Williamson's script would have been going forward if there had been a Scream 5 and 6 immediately after that. It just kind of became a little bit of a letdown. So from a studio production standpoint, what I see Scream 4 as is them going about making just another Scream movie, rather than making the best Scream movie that they possibly could have. Also, I don't even know what's up with the cinematography in this one. I think it's really ugly. Day scenes seem really like over contrasted, and night scenes seem like overly lit. So yeah, it's a fun movie for me, but it's always going to be last until they make something that's worse. In fourth place is going to be Scream 3. After living in hiding for several years, Sidney Prescott is drawn back out into the public eye when a new Ghostface killer begins murdering the cast members of the latest stab movie based on her life. Meanwhile, Gale Weathers, who is brought on as a police consultant, teams up with an undercover Dewey Riley where they investigate the seedy underbelly of 1970s Hollywood and discover a startling connection to the murder of Sidney's mother. Okay, Scream 3, the bastard stepchild of the franchise. This is one that has really grown on me a lot. I grew up watching all of these movies as they came out, and Scream 3 at the time was a big letdown because it was very far removed from the two that came before it. More so tonally, the fact that, you know, we are now having a Scream comedy. But if you've kind of followed my channel and some of the other rankings I've done in the past, I am a huge fan of camp. And this movie, by and large, is a very campy movie. This is the campy Scream movie. And I know that camp is not for everyone. You know, a lot of people would rather have more of a serious horror movie than some comedy schlock. But I think that an important component of any type of horror movie, whether it's campy or not, is that it needs to be fun. And this movie is the most fun. This is the most fun Scream movie out of the franchise. This is certainly hindered by the fact that there was a lot of censorship going on at the time, so a lot of the kills are kind of scaled back in terms of their intensity and bloodiness, and mostly just turn out to be basic stabbings. But I think regardless of the tonal inconsistencies here, they really do a good job of tying up this trilogy of 1, 2, and 3. More so in terms of Sidney's storyline, because I think that Sidney's part of the movie is the absolute best part of this. I think that I might actually enjoy Sidney in Scream 3 more than I enjoy her in Scream 2. Also, I would be remiss to not mention Parker Posey as, you know, kind of the standout of this movie, because this really is her show for a great deal of it when it's not Sidney's. And obviously, you know, I could make all these what ifs. You know, had they done this differently, the movie could have been much better. But the fact of the matter is that Scream 3 doesn't really fit in all that well, because each one of these movies kind of has a theme to it. The first movie is pretty much about horror movies in general. The second movie is specifically about horror sequels. The fourth movie is about horror remakes, and then the 2022 movie is about requels. And this one is about horror trilogies. And horror trilogies, I mean, even Randy says it in the movie, are a rarity. So throughout the entire movie, I feel like they're really trying to push this theme, and it never really comes together the way that it does for all the other movies outside of this one. Another issue with this movie, why I feel like it might have failed where the two previous ones succeeded, is the fact that, again, we had a lot of studio meddling here. And I think the difference here with the studio meddling that I was talking about with Scream 4, where, you know, they had a really good story going into it, they had everything lined up with Wes Craven, all the legacy characters returning, and then the studio just slowly stripped everything down until it obviously was not the best version of that movie it could be. With Scream 3, it was kind of the opposite, where they went in with literally just scraps of an idea, no writer, Nev Campbell's limited availability, and a quickly impending production schedule. And Wes Craven pulled double duty in helping to write the script and managed to bring it all together to make the best possible movie version of those scraps that they could have. So whether you think this movie is good or not, it really is a testament to how well it turned out because of Wes Craven. I have noticed this movie kind of taking an upswing lately, like a lot more people are admitting to liking it or just changing their opinion on it, which is a good thing. I'm not a champion of this movie by any means. I don't challenge people when they say that they don't like Scream 3 because, you know, opinion is subjective. But kind of like my opinions with Halloween 5 in that franchise, it's one of those movies you just have to go in understanding that this is a comedy most of the time. Unfortunately, it just isn't able to balance the more serious aspects when it comes to Sidney Prescott, which is the strength of this movie. So that's kind of why it sits a little lower for myself. In third place is going to be Scream, the new one. After her sister Tara is brutally attacked in her home by an assailant wearing a ghost face costume, Sam Carpenter returns to her hometown of Woodsboro, where she fears the incident may be linked to a dark secret that's rooted in her lineage. As more attacks and murders take place, it becomes apparent that the killer is creating their own stab fan fiction in which all of their victims are related to the original movie's characters. I know that there is a percentage of the fandom who does not like this movie and have been very vocal about that and have used the phrase recency bias as a reason for why it's popular right now. So I just wanted to put out there, this is not recency bias for me. This movie is in third place because I don't think that it outdoes anything that comes before it, but at the same time, it doesn't try to outdo it. It's not competing with itself. There's a vibe to this movie which feels like it both fits in with the Scream franchise, but also stands apart from it as well. And that's the fact that we don't have Wes Craven back. And that's not to say anything bad about Radio Silence, because I think that they did a wonderful job. I did not need to see someone else recreate Wes Craven's direction. I would much rather his direction be left untouched and you have new people coming in and honoring it, and that is exactly what they did. I think that this was really the only natural progression of where this franchise could have gone. But even just the fact of balancing these new characters and the legacy characters, that's something that, you know, as I said before, I think that they failed at in Scream 4. Here, everything just works out so perfectly. And even though that Sydney doesn't have all that much screen time here, every second of her being on screen is used to the fullest potential. Whereas in Scream 4, you know, we have scenes of her making tea. And this really kind of brings up this argument that I've been pushing a lot lately, is that it's not about the quantity of screen time so much as it is about the quality of screen time, because I'd rather have a Scream movie where every scene is used correctly, rather than just having an overabundance of things that might just more so be fan servicey than rather actually serve the plot in any way. But outside of some things in this movie that may straddle that line just a little bit, I feel that in terms of everywhere where this story goes from start to finish is very complementary within this franchise. It might not have been streamlined in the best way, but the end result is what really counts for me, because by the time the credits roll, I was very satisfied with this movie. Another advantage this movie has over 3 and 4, I believe, is the fact that they really reintroduced the murder mystery aspect of it. I don't think it was done perfectly, and I'll talk about that more when I get to the next film. But just in terms of crafting a story around the mystery, rather than just having it be a movie where death and horror happens and then there's a killer reveal at the end, I feel like this one at least kind of sets the stage. There's clues scattered throughout that makes it make sense in the end. If there were complaints that I had with this movie, which are very minor and, you know, might even be unavoidable, is the fact that the pacing, especially like through the beginning half of the movie, wasn't as tight as it could be. We obviously had to set up a new story for a new group of characters, which was going to slow the movie down a bit. Screams 2, 3, and 4 had the luxury of already having these pre-existing characters and knowing their story. So there's definitely some lags and lulls. But the other thing that, you know, really stood out to me, just in terms of what I felt was missing from this movie, were kind of like the big elaborate set pieces. And that's not to say that there wasn't anything within the body of this movie that didn't stand out to me, but just in terms of certain scenes that we would have seen in the 4 previous movies, such as the garage door death in the first one, or in Scream 2 when you've got Sydney and Hallie stuck in the back of the police car. Scream 3 had the big chase scene on the set of the Stab studio. And even Scream 4, they had all that stuff with Kirby on the phone with the killer when he was in the closet at Olivia's, and also at the end of the movie when they were doing the horror remake trivia. So it just felt a little lacking in this movie. I felt that like most of like the greater action and death scenes took place as like the movie went on, rather than just kind of like stopping to linger in a moment and let it all play out. But just to give a few other positive things to say here, I think that the kills themselves, even though they're not as many as we've seen in the previous movies, are quite intense. I feel like this might be the most violent Scream movie. I really liked most of the new characters, especially the people who survived. They were probably my favorites anyway, so I'm glad that we get to see them if and when we go into that next movie. Also, just because I haven't really heard anyone talk about this aspect of the film very much, I really liked the musical composition. I was worried over the fact that they weren't bringing back Marco Beltrami, but I feel that Brian Tyler as a composer brings a very understated and haunting score. It's similar enough with what we've had before, but it also sounds completely new. And that kind of works just with the movie itself, because I feel like this movie does subvert our expectations more than any of the other movies. And in that regard, I feel that there are a lot of twists and surprises. And I don't mean when it comes to like who the killers are or what their motive is, but mostly just in terms of how the story unfolds, because it doesn't follow the same template template that we've seen before. And I think that in terms of reinvigorating this franchise and breathing new life into it, that is exactly what they needed to do. In second place is going to be Scream 2. Several years after the Woodsboro murders, Sidney Prescott, now attending college, is tormented by a copycat killer who has once again drawn the attention of Gail Weathers, now an acclaimed celebrity journalist whose tell-all book has been adapted into a major motion picture called Stab. Okay, so I did mention that I wasn't a champion of Scream 3, but I absolutely am a champion of Scream 2. And I think that probably more so a champion of Scream 2 than I am a champion of the original Scream. And I think that in certain elements, Scream 2 is better than the original Scream, but as a movie overall, I still would put Scream 2 in second. And just, you know, coming off of the heels of what I was talking about with Scream 2022, is that this movie feels like it's chock full of set pieces. There are so many scenes within this movie that just feel so large scale and grandiose of this genre that, you know, I'm willing to say that Scream 2 is, you know, not only second on this list, but also probably my favorite horror sequel, or at least like part 2 horror sequel of any horror franchise. This movie also feels so intrinsically 90s to me. I mean, that's the thing with the Scream franchise, is that every single one of these movies is a reflection of the time in which it came out. Like Scream 4 is so like 2011, but I guess like with Scream 2 in 1997, I have so many fond memories of that time in my life. I also really love the killers in this movie, or at least like how they were implemented into the story. And I think that that really kind of comes from my love of murder mysteries, because I really do feel that this movie has the strongest murder mystery aspect out of all the franchise. So much to the point where Scream 2 really feels like a classic giallo. And if you've never heard of that term before, a giallo is an Italian subgenre of horror that really peaked in the 1970s and were sort of based off of old pulp novels, because giallo actually translates to yellow, which was the color of these paperbacks. And as movies, they would typically feature stories that blended the atmosphere and suspense of thriller fiction with elements of slasher violence, all surrounding a mysterious killer whose identity would not be revealed until the film's final act. And I feel like our characters this time around are much more ingrained in the mystery aspect of the film, as they're taking a much more proactive stance in solving the murders rather than just going about their daily routine until the killer strikes. So it gives them a lot more agency and makes me feel like more of an active audience just for being taken along for the investigation. And that is always just going to be so much more interesting to me, you know, as a movie, regardless of, you know, what people think of the pacing or the whole cafeteria scene, which is fine in my opinion. I don't know what the big deal is, but I can sit through light character moments like that because I know that in the larger scheme of the movie, the characters have a mission. And even just in terms of the characters' growth and, you know, where they've come from the original and have again converged together 2 years later, and how the events from the previous movie have affected their lives. It all just feels very energetic here, which is something that I haven't gotten from any movies that come after this one. And also just because I did mention him earlier, I wanted to point out Marco Beltrami, because I think that Scream 2 has his best score out of the franchise, especially during Gale's chase scene. Honestly, like, it's really hard for me to find anything bad about this movie. I think if there is, it's just that there's a lot of characters in here and they don't all get the screen time that they deserve. Not to say that this movie should have been any longer, because it already is the longest Scream movie at 2 hours, but you know, like maybe there could have been some extra stuff added in and that wouldn't have bothered me at all. But at the end of the day, I think that Scream 2's biggest fault is that it's just simply not Scream 1. And obviously, huge shocker here, because in first place is going to be the original Scream. A year after the murder of her mother, Sidney Prescott is terrorized by a masked killer who targets her and her friends by using their love of horror films as an inspiration for their deadly game. I think it's really hard to make an argument as to why Scream 1 wouldn't be at the top of any Scream ranking list. I think it just mostly comes down to Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson. I think that just everything worked together very synergistically, and a lot of that has to do with the fact fact that there was not a lot of studio meddling with that first Scream movie. That didn't come in until the sequels, and it just got worse and worse up until Scream 4. Because with that first movie, you have to remember that the horror genre was on a decline. Nobody put any stock into horror movies at that point, and Dimension Films was really like the only one that was kind of capitalizing on the fact that nobody else was producing horror movies at the time. And it really wasn't until after the success of Scream that they realized, like, we can make a lot of really good money here. So just because of that, like, very hands-off approach during the first one, like, they gave Wes Craven free rein to do as much as he possibly needed to do to make that movie the absolute best. And that's really what it comes down to. Like, Scream was the best version of that movie it could have been. All the pieces for the original just fell into place. Like, this is the best cast. Nobody feels superfluous at all. It's horrifying, it's fun. It gave us an iconic serial killer with Ghostface, and it just feels so smooth. There is no excess in this movie. If there's one scene I would cut, it was probably the scene in the grocery store where you see the reflection of Ghostface in the fridge. Like, that was stupid. But everything else is absolutely perfect from start to finish. Scream 1 is a perfect movie, and there are not a lot of movies that I will say are a perfect movie. And I think the fact that you can have a movie like that some of us have watched 100 times at this point and can still find meaning in it and enjoy it either on the same level or even greater than the last time we watched it, that's saying something. If you guys want to check out some more Scream related content, you can click on either one of these playlists. Until next time, I've been Zach Cherry, and I'll be right back.